Honestly, who genuinely dreams of being a corporate accountant? It's just so incredibly dry. The way my career was casually mocked over a $350 a plate steakhouse, dinner felt like coarse sandpaper against my skin. My brother's fiancée, Vanessa, raised her crystal wine glass with a polished, practiced grace, as if she had just rested her winning case in front of a jury. "She's not wrong, you know," she added breezily, taking a delicate sip. My father, Thomas, laughed from the head of the table, a deep, booming sound that demanded attention. Our Clara has always played it safe. No risks, no waves. My mother, Martha, immediately chimed in, adjusting her pearl necklace. "We just pray you settle down with a reliable man soon, dear. At least your little desk job is secure." Then, Vanessa leaned forward over her truffle risotto, delivering the final, condescending blow with absolute elegance. "It's actually quite endearing that you treat your little spreadsheet macros like a real tech venture. Clara, have you ever felt completely invisible in a room full of the people who are supposed to know you best? Tell me your story down in the comments below." I didn't cry. I didn't defend myself. I didn't even blink. I simply placed my silver fork down on the heavy linen tablecloth. The sharp clink of metal against the fine bone china severed the ambient noise of the restaurant. The entire table went completely silent. They were holding their breath, waiting for me to shrink into myself, to force a self-deprecating smile, to apologize for taking up oxygen in their orbit. Instead, I locked eyes directly with Vanessa. Her expression was picture-perfect, radiating a smug, unearned confidence. "You are referring to Core Detect," I stated. My tone was entirely flat, devoid of any emotional temperature. Her flawless expression wavered for a fraction of a second. She clearly hadn't anticipated that I would even know the name of the software her venture capital firm was targeting. "Yes," she replied smoothly, quickly regaining her composure. "That quaint little tech startup. Our acquisition team is currently evaluating it. We fully intend to scoop it up for pennies on the dollar." "Is that so?" She gave a dismissive little sigh. "The developers don't even possess the business acumen to realize what they—" "You can't purchase it," I said, slicing straight through her sentence like a scalpel. My brother Derek shifted uncomfortably in his tailored suit, clearly annoyed. "Clara, please don't do this. Stop making things weird." I didn't even look at him. My gaze remained anchored on Vanessa. "You can't buy it," I repeated, my voice steady, dropping an octave. "Because I own it. Core Detect is mine." Suddenly, the heavy atmosphere in that exclusive dining room shifted, becoming thicker than the rich Cabernet in their glasses. It was the crushing weight of a monumental secret finally being dragged into the glaring light. "Let me explain my family to you. They aren't inherently cruel people. They are simply performers on a stage of their own making. My parents, Thomas and Martha, exist primarily for the country club optics. Their entire reality revolves around maintaining appearances. To them, success must be a tangible, flashy object. It's a freshly leased Porsche in the driveway, a booming voice at a charity gala, or a designer label discreetly shown off during Sunday brunch. My brother Derek is their golden child, a charismatic luxury real estate broker. He sells the illusion of wealth just as well as he lives it. He talks far more than he actually works, but the hefty commission checks keep arriving. When Derek bought his first luxury watch, my parents threw a backyard party that felt more like a corporate networking event. He shines effortlessly. And more importantly, he's engaged to a venture capitalist like Vanessa, which only adds to his glittering portfolio. And then there is me, Clara, 34, a forensic accountant, reliable, predictable, entirely forgettable. I am the one they frantically call when a complicated tax audit looms over their heads. I am the designated driver after their lavish wine-tasting weekends, the quiet, unassuming backdrop to their carefully curated lives. When I paid off my student loans years ahead of schedule, my mother merely gave me a tight smile and asked if I could help serve the appetizers. I am the muted shadow that makes their spotlight appear so much brighter. In my own home, I was practically invisible. But what they never realized was that while they were busy performing for their peers, I was quietly building an empire. For 5 long years, I had been nurturing a massive secret. After long days of crunching numbers, I spent my nights developing Core Detect. It is an advanced AI system, a digital bloodhound designed to detect complex corporate fraud in minutes irregularities that would usually take entire teams of seasoned analysts months to uncover. It wasn't glamorous. It didn't demand constant validation or applause. It simply worked, like me. And just last week, without a single word to my family, I had quietly signed an exclusive licensing contract. It wasn't just a minor achievement, it was a monumental deal worth millions. 12 of them, to be exact. When I finally exited the restaurant that evening, after Vanessa's face had completely drained of color and Derek had stumbled through a series of confused, stuttering questions, I didn't feel a rush of triumph. I felt an overwhelming, deep exhaustion settling into my bones. Driving home through the quiet suburban streets, I realized exactly why I had hidden my massive success for so long. It wasn't modesty, it was an act of self-preservation. I parked my modest sedan outside my apartment building, but I didn't make a move to get out. The engine ticked softly, the only sound in the cool night air. And suddenly, the entire dynamic made perfect sense. There's a psychological term for families like mine, the golden child and the scapegoat. It's a performative system, one built entirely on maintaining a flawless facade. Families like mine desperately need a golden child. Derek fills that role with absolute perfection. He reflects success back to them like a polished mirror. He lives the visible, loud dreams they deeply admire. His wins, his expensive suits, his flashy fiancée, they all make my parents look incredible to their peers. But they also require someone else, a counterweight. That was me. I wasn't inherently boring by nature. I was boring by design. I was the safe comparison point they could comfortably measure themselves against. My steadiness was the dull canvas that made Derek's ambitious, noisy life seem truly dazzling. My quiet competence gave them silent permission to overlook my worth in favor of his louder, emptier achievements. I was the built-in lesser version. And that night at the steakhouse, I had completely shattered their carefully constructed structure. I foolishly thought the truth. The sheer weight of A is less than B is greater than. Contract is less than B is greater than worth. 12 is less than B is greater than. Millions is less than B is greater than. Would finally force them to see me. I was entirely wrong. When I unlocked my apartment door, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. There were no apologies. There was only escalation. The first message was from my mother, Martha. Clara, you humiliated Vanessa tonight. I don't know where you learned such tacky, aggressive behavior. You need to call her and apologize immediately before you ruin this family. I stared blankly at the glowing screen. Tacky. Aggressive. Moments later, Derek texted, "Are you completely out of your mind? You just ruined a massive opportunity for me. Vanessa was helping me with a major deal. What is wrong with you? Why are you always so jealous? You literally ruin everything you touch." I slowly scrolled through the barrage of messages, searching for one simple, logical question. Is it true? What exactly is Core Detect? $12 million? Nothing. Not a single question about the company. Not one word about the monumental deal I had just closed. They weren't upset about my success. They were furious that I had stepped outside my assigned role as the quiet, obedient daughter. They weren't shocked by the truth. They were shocked that I had the audacity to speak it aloud, that I had disrupted the illusion, that I had cracked the perfect family image. The raw anger radiating from their texts gave me a strange, cold clarity. This was never about love, support, or family loyalty. It was purely about control, and I was officially done playing my part. A full week passed, just long enough for the deafening silence from my family to shift from hostile passive aggression into a heavy, suffocating weight. Then, the official invitation arrived in my mail slot. It wasn't a casual text. It wasn't a reluctant phone call. It was a thick, textured, cream-colored card, the kind of expensive stationery that costs $20 apiece. Embossed gold lettering glinted under my hallway light. You are cordially invited to celebrate the engagement of Derek and Vanessa at the Oakwood Country Club. I held the thick card in my hand, tracing the elegant script. This wasn't an invitation to celebrate love. This was a direct summons. It was a formal command, printed on fine paper, explicitly telling me to fall back in line, to show up, smile politely, wear a modest dress, and pretend that the explosive dinner confrontation never happened. They were attempting to reset the family narrative. They were betting everything that my deep-seated fear of being entirely cast out was stronger than my need for basic respect. They genuinely thought I would simply fold and apologize. They had completely forgotten who I was. I am a forensic accountant by trade. I don't engage in screaming matches. I don't argue with irrational people. I outwit them. I walked straight to my home office, sat down at my desk, and opened my high-powered laptop. I wasn't thinking about the $12 million anymore. I was intensely focused on Vanessa's smug, surprised face at the restaurant. I kept replaying her words in my mind. We fully intend to scoop it up for pennies on the dollar. Why would she say that so confidently? How did she even know about Core Detect in the first place, when it was still a closely guarded secret? And then, a memory hit me with the force of a freight train. 8 weeks ago, purely as a market viability test, I had sent out a very limited, heavily restricted sandbox demo of Core Detect to a dozen top-tier VC firms, just to gauge genuine interest. I sent it from a burner email address, completely untraceable, under a fake LLC name, Apex Analytics. Vanessa's firm, Vanguard Capital, had been one of the recipients. I immediately pulled up my secure server access logs. My fingers flew across the keyboard, a familiar, comforting rhythm. I wasn't angry anymore. I was hyper-focused, a predator on the scent. This was my world. This was the digital ledger. And the numbers, the data trails, they never lie. I cross-referenced the dates, and there it was, glowing bright red on my monitor. The access logs directly from Vanguard Capital, Vanessa's VC firm. Dozens upon dozens of attempts. They weren't merely reviewing the demo. They were actively pinging the firewall. They were running aggressive breach protocols. They were desperately trying to bypass the restricted sandbox environment and penetrate the core code of my software. They weren't just evaluating my company. They were trying to break into it, to steal it from the inside out. But that wasn't even the best part. I'm a forensic accountant who builds software explicitly designed to catch the smartest, most sophisticated thieves in the corporate world. Did they honestly believe I wouldn't have countermeasures buried deep within the demo's source code? I had planted a brilliant little trap, a digital canary in the coal mine. It was a beautiful, completely harmless-looking string of code. But if anyone attempted to copy, export, or reverse engineer that specific section, it would secretly activate their webcam and microphone, silently recording the next 5 minutes of their meeting. I navigated to the encrypted secure folder. My heart was thumping against my ribs. There was one file from exactly 8 weeks ago. I clicked play. The high-definition video flickered to life. And there she was, Vanessa, sitting in a sleek, glass-walled corporate conference room, leaning intensely over a laptop with 2 of her senior engineers. "This is incredibly sloppy," one of the engineers was saying, rubbing his temples. "The security on this thing is too tight. We simply can't get to the core logic." And then Vanessa's voice, clear, cold, and dripping with arrogant confidence, filled my quiet apartment. "Forget the front door. We don't need to actually buy it. Just crack this piece right here," she commanded, pointing sharply at the screen. "Find the core algorithm, and we'll build our own clone. By the time we launch, the little accounting girl who built this will never know what hit her." I stopped the video. I leaned back in my ergonomic chair and just breathed. They weren't just arrogant. They weren't just dismissive of me. They were literal thieves, and I held the undeniable receipt. The engagement party at the Oakwood Country Club was an absolute spectacle. I mean, truly. White orchids were practically dripping from the grand arches. A live string quartet was playing classical music in the manicured garden. My mother, Martha, was gliding around the opulent room, practically soaking in the reflected glory of it all. I walked in wearing a simple, tailored navy blue dress, professional, clean, and completely unremarkable. My mother spotted me near the entrance, and her tense shoulders visibly relaxed. She rushed over, grabbing my arm in a grip that was just a fraction too tight. "Clara, darling, you came," she whispered, her smile strained and panicked. "Thank you. Now please, just be nice tonight." "I won't do anything, Mom," I said smoothly, and I meant it. I smiled. I nodded politely to passing guests. I retrieved a glass of plain club soda from the bar. I stood quietly in the back, sipping my drink, and watched my brother, Derek, and his fiancée, Vanessa, stand in the dead center of the room like a power couple straight out of a bad romantic comedy. They confidently started the toasts, clinking their crystal glasses together. My father, Thomas, went first, his booming voice echoing off the vaulted ceilings. He talked endlessly about this wonderful new addition to the family and the incredible synergy she brought. He clearly didn't know what the word actually meant in a corporate context, but it sounded expensive and impressive to his country club friends. Derek spoke next, practically beaming. He talked excitedly about closing the deal of a lifetime, gesturing wildly to Vanessa, clearly high on his own performance and the applause of the room. He lifted his glass high and pointed it directly at me, standing quietly in the back shadows. "And I want to give a very special shout-out to my little sister, Clara," he announced loudly. The entire room turned to look at me. I just stood there, my expression completely neutral, gripping my club soda. "I know we've had our little differences recently," he said, laughing performatively to the crowd. "But I'm just so glad you're here tonight, Claire. So incredibly glad you finally get to see what real, tangible success looks like." The polite applause from the guests washed over me, but I wasn't listening to them. I was watching Vanessa. She was looking right at me, smiling, but it wasn't a kind or welcoming smile. It was a deeply is less than, B is greater than smug is less than, B is greater than, entirely self-satisfied smirk. The smile of someone who genuinely, deep down in her bones, believed she had won the game. And in that precise moment, I realized exactly what I was looking at. This is the Dunning-Kruger effect dressed up in a $1,000 designer gown. It's a well-known cognitive bias where people with extremely low ability at a specific task massively overestimate their own competence. They know just enough buzzwords to sound impressive, just enough jargon like AI, core algorithm, and synergy to trick themselves into thinking they're actual experts. But they know so incredibly little about the actual mechanics that they are completely blind to their own profound incompetence. Vanessa wasn't just arrogant. She was fundamentally, deeply mediocre. Her towering confidence wasn't built on a foundation of actual knowledge or skill. It was built on a complete, profound lack of it. She genuinely thought she was the smartest person in the room. She genuinely thought she was going to get away with stealing my life's work. She had absolutely no idea that the boring little accounting girl standing quietly in the navy dress wasn't just another guest in the room. I was the one who built the room. "May I say a few words?" I didn't wait for a polite yes. I just walked steadily forward, my heels clicking sharply against the marble floor, and firmly took the microphone from the elegant stand. The live string quartet abruptly faded into silence. The entire room, which had been buzzing with laughter and clinking glasses, went completely, utterly is less than B is greater than silent is less than B is greater than. Derek and Vanessa were frozen in place, both staring at me with that exact same nervous, deeply annoyed look they had given me at the steakhouse. I smiled, a tight, incredibly polite smile. "Congratulations to my brother and to Vanessa. I just wanted to say, Vanessa, you were absolutely right." I let that simple sentence hang heavily in the air. Vanessa looked deeply confused, highly suspicious. "You were right at that dinner," I continued smoothly, looking around at the sea of confused faces at the country club. "My job is incredibly boring." I paused, ensuring every single eye was fixed on me. "It's extremely tedious, especially when you have to sit alone and review hours of internal security footage." I calmly pulled my smartphone out of my modest navy dress pocket. I walked deliberately to the high-end projector they'd been using for the engagement photo slideshow and seamlessly plugged in my digital adapter. The massive screen on the wall flickered violently. The smiling, heavily airbrushed photos of Derek and Vanessa vanished into thin air. They were instantly replaced by a grainy, familiar corporate conference room. And then Vanessa's voice, not her polished, charming country club voice, but her real, sharp corporate one, blasted through the ballroom sound system. "Find the core algorithm, and we'll build our own clone. By the time we launch, the little accounting girl who built this will never know what hit her." You could have heard a single pin drop onto the thick, expensive carpet. It was a very special, terrifying kind of silence. A sharp, collective intake of breath from over 100 elite guests. My father, Thomas, looked exactly like he'd seen a ghost. My mother's perfectly manicured hand was clamped tightly over her open mouth. Derek just stared blankly at the massive screen, his face completely, utterly devoid of any expression, frozen in pure shock. Vanessa's face was no longer smug. It was a twisted, horrifying mask of pure reptilian rage. She lunged forward, desperately trying to snatch the microphone from my hand. "You," she spat out. I simply held up one hand, and I didn't even bother to raise my voice. "Don't." My voice was ice cold. It cut right through her blazing anger like a knife. "That is called intellectual property theft. It's highly illegal. And you just broadcast your full, unedited confession to about 150 of your closest friends and professional colleagues." I turned back to the stunned, entirely silent crowd. "But that's not the only news tonight. As some of you just clearly heard, I am the founder of CoreDetect." I forced myself to look directly at my parents. Their faces were chalk white. "And last week, I signed a $12 million licensing deal for that exact software." My mother made a small, choked, gasping noise. "But here's the part you'll really, truly love, Vanessa," I said, turning back to face her. She was frozen in place, her hands still raised awkwardly in the air. "I didn't actually sell my company. We're merging. The deal was finalized early this morning." I let that sink in, watching the blood completely drain from her face as her brain frantically did the corporate math. "We're merging with the parent holding company of Vanguard Capital. My new role, starting bright and early this Monday, is Global Head of Digital Compliance and Asset Security, which means, technically, I am your boss's boss." I gave her a small, perfectly professional smile. "I'll see you on Monday for that performance review." I didn't stay a moment longer to watch the spectacular fallout. I didn't need to. I placed the black microphone carefully back onto the sleek metal stand. The small, sharp click echoed loudly in the dead, heavy silence of the Oakwood Country Club ballroom. And then I turned on my heel and walked straight out the double doors. The immediate aftermath, I heard much later through the corporate grapevine, was not dramatic in a screaming match sort of way. It was swift, cold, and brutally corporate. Vanessa was unceremoniously fired before noon on Monday. Not by me. I never even made it to the Vanguard office that day. The parent company's vast legal department had already seen the high-definition video, which I had politely forwarded to them along with my signed contract and a detailed audit report, and they swiftly escorted her from the building. There was no argument. Just a cardboard box and a stern security guard. My brother Derek, the golden child, didn't lose his lucrative real estate job. He lost something far more valuable to his fragile ego, his captive audience. He didn't cancel the engagement. Vanessa did. She completely disappeared from his life. Last I heard through mutual acquaintances, she was desperately trying to sue me for an invasion of privacy. She lost spectacularly in court. Derek was now just that poor, gullible boy, the one who got tricked by a corporate thief. He became the primary subject of hushed whispers and condescending pity at the country club. His effortless shine was entirely gone. His sterling reputation, the only actual currency he had ever truly valued, was now utterly worthless. And my parents? They called. Oh, they called dozens upon dozens of times. The frantic calls quickly turned into lengthy, emotional voicemails. First, they were incredibly angry. "Clara, what have you done? You've made an absolute fool of this family in front of everyone." Then, they were deeply confused. "Clara, please just call us back. We need to talk. We need to somehow fix this mess before it gets any worse." And finally, they were utterly desperate. My mother's voice was cracking over the line. "Clara, please. You've clearly made your point. Now just stop. You're tearing this family apart." But they still didn't get it at all. I wasn't tearing the family apart. I was simply turning on the harsh overhead lights so everyone could finally see the deep, ugly cracks that had been there all along. I didn't do it to make a petty point. I did it to permanently end the conversation. That entire week, I sat quietly in my modest apartment. I looked at the massive spreadsheet that detailed the $12 million deal. I looked at the staggering number glowing on the screen, and for the very first time in my life, it didn't feel like a heavy, suffocating secret. It felt like absolute freedom. I woke up early the next day, the soft, golden morning sunlight spilling across my kitchen counter as I brewed a quiet cup of coffee. I sat down, opened my browser, and booked a one-way flight to the Amalfi Coast in Italy. I gently closed my laptop. The soft, definitive click of the metal lid shutting sounded incredibly final, like the heavy, reassuring thud of a steel vault door locking into place. It felt exactly like turning the very last page of a very long, very exhausting book that I never had to read again. That night, for the first time in as long as my memory could reach, I slept all the way through until the morning. There was no lingering guilt. There was no toxic family noise. There was no performance to maintain. There was just pure, unadulterated peace. And it was absolutely beautiful. Thank you for listening to this story here on Karma's Coils. You know, sometimes holding your tongue isn't a sign of weakness. It's simply the crucial time you spend doing the necessary work, gathering your strength, and preparing your truth in the shadows. If you've ever found yourself forced to choose between keeping your family's fragile peace and standing up for your own undeniable truth, I want to hear from you. Share your personal story down in the comments below. We read every single one. And please, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next tale of justice and redemption. Stay strong, and always trust your own worth.